Good morning, everyone. I am Silvia Lobo. I work at the National Herbarium of Costa Rica in the National Museum. And in this opportunity, I'm going to show you part of the results of the work that I've been doing since 2000 when I started organizing and studying the type collection in the herbarium. I'm going to show you just the information of the monocot types, of course. As you all may know, names of biological entities have types, a type being a specimen to which the name of a taxon is permanently linked. And therefore, types are particularly important to taxonomists, and this means they are among the most scientifically valuable and historically significant specimens in the collection we care for. Accessing type specimens is essential for taxonomic revision, clarify the classification and the correct name of an organism or identification purposes. But accessing type specimens can be a limiting step, as taxa have been described for more than 300 years, and their types are sometimes separately archived in multiple locations. They are, in some cases, not deposited in the herbaria cited in the original description. The author do not annotate the specimen as a type, or the types are lost or damaged, etc., making difficult to detect and to register, and by consequence, difficult to study. Fortunately, worldwide efforts in collection digitization and imaging makes more possible to locate, consult, and study type specimens. Here we can see some of the databases online that I'm sure that you all use and know. GBIF and JSTOR Global Plants, and some institutional databases like Tropicos or the Smithsonian, but many more exist. As you know, Costa Rica is a small country, only makes up 0.03% of the world landmass, but is the home of about 5% of the estimated species on Earth. Seed plants are represented by at least 10,600 species, and monocots, well, my numbers are different, 3,500 or so species. Although Costa Rica vegetation began to have interest by 17th century, it was not until 1887 that a formal entity for the registration and study of biodiversity was established in the country, which means that before 1887, all specimens resulting from the exploration were taken outside the country for study and were deposited in foreign institutions and collections. Scientist Henry Pittier here began the important challenge of promoting knowledge of the flora of Costa Rica. Under his direction, 2 specimens of each plant were gathered, one for the herbarium and one to be sent to an appropriate specialist, usually in Baltimore, Brussels, Paris, or Geneva at that moment. Since the arrival of Anders Ørsted, there have been more than 150 nationals, but most of all foreign botanists working on the registration and knowledge of the country's vegetation. And these, of course, are just some of the botanists. And our purposes, there are just 2 ladies involved in the study of Costa Rican botany. That's important. Some of the researchers deposited specimens in the country's herbarium, but some did not. Important contributions to the flora of Costa Rica were produced through the years, and for 70 years, the Herbario Nacional managed to position itself in a privileged place as a reference of the botany of the country and the region. Traditionally, and probably as part of the history, the Herbario has maintained relationships with other plant collections in the United States and Europe. By the 1990s, it houses around 200 1,000 plant specimens of 90% of the species known for the country. By 1989, Instituto Nacional de Biodiversidad, or INBio, initiated a systematic program of both floristic and faunistic inventories in Costa Rica, and in 1993 established its own herbario, the INB. But in 2015, they decided to give its important specimens to the Museo Nacional, where it is maintained as an integral part of the Herbario Nacional collections. Until 1995, there were not a systematic registry of the type specimens in the Herbarium, nor a type collection. This first review included only Liliate group and listed just 295 type specimens of 280 taxa. Orchidaceae family had a very important number of type specimens. At the beginning of the 21st century, the Herbarium decided to separate the principal type specimens, which are holotypes, syntypes, isotypes, from the general collection, and a specific protocol began to be applied for these important specimens. In that decade, lists from all type specimens of all groups were published. More than 2,500 type specimens were recorded in the herbaria at that moment, and the number of monocot type specimens, taxa, and type categories increased. Orchids, aroids, and grasses with the higher numbers. The use of online collection databases and online prologue publications helped in this process. Because in 2015, the Herbario received the important collection from INBio, and the number of specimens grew almost double, it was necessary to carry out a new review and update of the type specimens. It is important to remember that the INB Herbarium contained the specimens related to the Manual de Plantas de Costa Rica project, which resulted in numerous discoveries for the country and the world. So I'm going to show you the results of this new study. First, all Costa Rican type information was obtained from online databases like Tropical JSTOR, Epidendra, and also from the original descriptions. This resulted in a data set of the taxa references, names of the person who collect the specimen, type categories, locations, and other important data related to type specimens. With this data set, it was possible to look at the type specimens present in the herbarium. So an active search was carried out with the help of the database of the plant collection. Each specimen found was examined against the original description and or other sources. The information of the type specimen was then updated in the database. Then they were photographed or scanned and finally stored in the type collection. And this table resumes some of the numbers that I search in these two principal sources, and what I found in the overall study. And here we can see that all the numbers are different in each of the items for number of specimens, number of taxa, institutions, and categories, type categories also. According to the sources consulted, at least 2,034 monocot taxa have been described from type or material collected in Costa Rica since the mid-19th century. Orchids registered the largest number of taxa, followed by aroids and bromeliads, and at least 4,665 type specimens from all categories were used and exist in the collections and herbariums around the world. The average of new taxa publication between 1853 and 2023 is 105 per decade, with highest number in 1923 and 1930, when Rudolf Lechter and O. Ames described hundreds, here, more than 500 new orchid species collected by Alberto Brenes, Paul Stanley, Carl Lancaster, among others. In the 1970s, with Luis Diego Gomez as a director of the National Museum, there was a new impulse in plant studies. In 1990s, there was an increment in new species descriptions, especially orchids, grasses, aroids, palms, and other families as a result of the Manual de Plantas de Costa Rica project. And here is where the girls began to appear, since here to here. I'm sorry. Well, I think I don't have time. Enough time. Okay, but where are all these important specimens? And you can see in this world map, there are Costa Rican type specimens in many collections, especially in United States and Europe. Few type specimens are in Latin American collection, sadly. At least 2,514 type specimens, representing 59 of the taxa, are supposed to be deposited in 76 collections in 15 countries. 1,064 holotypes and 812 isotypes are deposited in the United States and Europe collections. And in Costa Rica, beside the National Herbarium, there are all two collections that have type specimens. These are the Jardín Botánico Lancaster and the Herbarium in the University of Costa Rica. And they hold 278 type specimens, mainly orchids. And this is, to show you how are the distribution in these three principal herbariums in United States where the Costa Rican type specimens are deposited. First, the AMES Herbarium, which is specialized in orchids, have a very important holotype collection, but also other categories. The Smithsonian also have important isotype, holotype collection, but orchids and other families. And Missouri Botanical Garden, which was the main institution behind the Manual de Plantas de Costa Rica, also have an important collection of holotypes. And well, there are other institutions also. With regard of the type specimens in the National Herbarium, now here in Costa Rica, this long process resulted in an important increase in the monocot type collection. The number of type specimens increased 3 times, and the number of taxa increased twice as much. More families are now represented, but as before, Orchidaceae, Araceae, and Poaceae have the highest number of type specimens and taxa. Also, more type categories are now recorded. It is important to notice that it is the interest of the Herbario Nacional to register the paratypes in the same way as the other type categories. This is because in some but few cases, the paratypes are the only type specimens present in the herbarium. This is when the holotype and isotypes, when they exist, are deposited elsewhere. Paratypes are also important when the principal types are lost. And I want to just now point out here that look at the holotype number 188, and then in the slides before, in the outside the country, there are more than 1,000 holotypes specimens. And I am not judging, it's just, data. That's the real thing. So that is why in the herbarium, the paratypes are also important to, to locate, because sometimes there are the only specimen type categories that we have, and it's important for the people to know that they can be the reference for their study. Okay, what else? Okay, 68 types from other countries, which is not much. And this is just to show how the differences between the different updates that have been done with the type collection in the herbarium, in 1995, in 2002, and now in 2023, there almost increases in every the items or the variables, specimens, more taxa, well, not more families, but foreign, and also in type categories, new type categories that are being included, in time, and the families also with different numbers higher in this last update. And just some thoughts for conclusions. Despite the effort of digitation and access to information on type specimens on global and national platforms, there is still a lot of variability in terms of the data that each of these sources contains. A significant number of specimens originating from Costa Rica have been used for the description of new species of monocots, especially from the families Orchidaceae, Araceae, and Poaceae. The description of new species from Costa Rica have been carried out mostly by foreign botanists and for males. We have to change this. 54% of the type specimens originating in Costa Rica are deposited in institutions and collections in the United States and Europe. Among these, 77% of the holotypes and 67% of the isotypes. The registration, digitization, and access of all type specimens are the information is an important and necessary task in all herbaria. The distribution of specimens and duplicates of different herbariums to different herbariums contributes to their conservation and study, and this is also true for type specimens. And thank you. And this is where you can in this link, there is the information of the type specimens of the Costa Rican herbarium if you want to consult them.
Thank you very much. We now have time for questions.
Thank you. I have consulted your database online and I found the data of the records. Is it possible to access images, or do you have plans for putting online images of the specimens, at least the types?
Yeah, I must say that our database is not very friendly at the moment. So maybe the information is difficult to reach, but yes, there are, if you go to every specimen, there is a map and the information and also the image. But we are in process. Yeah, we have a lot of thing to do, but we are in that process.
I just wanted to point out the importance of one of your first slides where you had a picture of Stinus formation sprutianum, and until I saw that specimen, there were 4 different species with that name, and the type of sprutianum was actually something from most people thought it was from Brazil. So it's completely important to have these type specimens.
Thank you.
Silvia, thank you for your fantastic speech. I think you are right that you have not to judge the past. The history of botany has been what has been. But I think that we should do something for the future. We work with Orchidaceae, and we noted frequently that in the last few years, species are still described using as holotypes that are deposited outside Costa Rica, and there are laws in our country that not suggest but oblige to deposit the holotypes in our country. I think that we should do something together, reasoning about that and try to find a solution, at least for the future. Thank you.
Any more questions? I don't see. Oh, sorry.
Thank you very much for your talk, Silvia. I have one question out of curiosity. You showed in one of your slides that there were about 40 types that were destroyed. Do you know what happened to them or why were they destroyed?
Yeah, that's this is the information that is not easy to get because you consult the original descriptions, but then you don't know what happened with the specimens. No, in this case, I do know that is why when in the in the Second World War, the Berlin was so there were a lot of type specimens, orchid type specimens that is selected, described, and they were there, and these are. But I think there are more than 40.
Okay, so the last question.
Thanks, Silvia, for a great talk. Alex Antonelli from Q. You mentioned the database and the challenges of making it user-friendly. Have you considered other open platforms, such as the Atlas of Living Australia and some other database that other countries have developed, so you don't have to start from scratch and could perhaps recycle and adapt it to the Costa Rican context?
Thank you. Actually, our information is in GBIF, but it's not being actualized since 2000 something, and we are working on that. We want to update that information in GBIF, and there are also a national database here in Costa Rica is Biodata CR that the government is working on. They are promoting the publication of the specimens and information in that platform. But yes, we are working. Resources are what we need. Okay, thank you.